Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy Austin here, and thank you for joining me on part 3 of our video series for landscapes. Today we will be going over how to make an auto shader like I've been promising you, and it's incredible, it's amazing. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell. Without further delay, get right into it. First thing we're going to want to do is open up the Epic Games Launcher, because we will need one more asset pack to finish off this tutorial. The one I will be using is the interactive Open World Foliage pack. And once you have that in your library, add to project just like we did with the textures from the last tutorial. Once that is done, go ahead and launch Unreal Engine. And you should be left with something similar to this. This is where we left off in the last video. In today's video, we will actually be changing a lot of this, and we're going to make it all computer generated instead. So right click in your landscape materials folder. I'm going to make a new folder, and we will call this Auto Shader. And so we're going to click into the Auto Shader folder, and from here we will make a material. Name this m_landscape auto, and then again right click it and hit create material instance. Leave the name as is. Now that we have our material and our material instance, we are going to need to basically recreate the materials that we want to use as a function, and then pull that function into our master landscape auto shader material. So in order to do that, the easiest way I found is if we go over in the content browser, open up the sands, go to our Thai beach sand, right click it, you can click find parent, and it will take you to the master material that they used for that. Just to be safe, and I don't want to mess up anything in the asset pack, I am going to duplicate this, so Control W, and I will just name this m_grass for now. Once we have that, we're going to drag it over to our Auto Shader folder, click Move here, and now that we have it in there, if we go into our Auto Shader, we can just take this, open it up, and it should look something like this. Going to get rid of some unnecessary things. We do not need the metallic. We do not need, we need the normal. We do not need the displacement either. So we should just have the albedo, the roughness, and the normal. Okay, so in this tutorial things will be going a little bit faster than the previous tutorials just because there is a lot to cover and I want to make sure that we can get through it. Feel free to watch the video back on a slower speed or just pause whenever you need to figure something out. Or again, don't forget to leave comments. I will answer as many questions as possible and I'd be more than happy to do that. Okay, so we have all of this good stuff. We have our albedo, our roughness, our normal. However, we need to add our textures. So I'm going to grab the tab and make it a separate window, and we are going to want to find our grass material that we used under, where was it? Under grass landscape textures 4K. I believe we used the ground 4 albedo. So what I'm going to do is select the albedo and then select the node in here, click this little white arrow to bring that in there. And we're going to do the same for the roughness as well as the normal. One thing I noticed is the grass roughness doesn't actually have a roughness in here. So we're just going to use the AO map. So I'm just going to bring that in there. Might take a second to load things, by the way. And then finally we need to do the same thing for our normal. So our ground 4 normal, bring that up in there. We should just have something pretty simple like this. Real quick, I'm just going to set a constant of 0 for our metallic, and that should do it for here. Okay, so now we just need to replicate this for the other 2 materials. So we already have our grass done. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And the easiest way to do it, in my opinion, give it a second to load. If we go over to our auto shader, we have this grass material. We can actually just duplicate it and then change the name. Instead of grass, I'll do sand, and then duplicate that. And instead of sand, we can do dirt. Alrighty, perfect. So let's open up the sand one. We'll do that next. And same thing, we are going to find our sand texture from surface, tie beach sand. We're going to select the albedo, bring it on over. Same thing for the roughness. Same thing for the normal. Save that. Go back to your auto shader folder. Now we should have the grass and the sand looking dandy. Now we're going to do the same thing for the dirt. Open it up and we are going to go to our mountain slope. Surface, hardened soil, and bring the albedo into here. Roughness, and the normal. Perfect. So all three of our base materials are set up. Now from this, we can actually turn these into material functions. Easiest way is just to select everything except for the dirt. This little guy over here. We're going to hit Control C, go back over to your auto shader, and we're going to right click. And this time, instead of making a material, we're going to go down to this materials textures drop down, and we're going to make a material function. We'll just call this dirt. So open up the dirt. And from here, let's bring all these together. So from here, we have just this little output node. We got nothing else. So we are going to need to make the attributes, and the attributes are the albedo, roughness, and the normal that we just put in. So drag out this output result, type in make material attributes. Make material attributes is what we're looking for, and this is basically what you're used to seeing when you're making a material. So we already have our dirt copied. Just in case, I'm gonna Control C that, go over to here, Control V, and then just plug in everything accordingly. So 0 for metallic, put the albedo into base color, roughness, and normal. Go ahead and save the dirt, and we can close out both of those just so we know we're done with them. Let's do the sand one next. So copy, Control C, right click, materials and textures, material function. This will be sand. Double click it to get in. Drag out this input node. We will do make material attributes. Line that up, make it look all nice. Control V, drag this over, and then just start plugging things in. So 0 for metallic, albedo, roughness, and normal. Save that. And now we can close out of our sand material and our sand material function. And then let's go to the grass one, last one left, copy, Control C, and then we are going to right click, materials and textures, make a material function. We'll call this grass. Double click, same thing, drag out the input node, make material attributes, and then we are going to paste our information, line that up for metallic, this to rough or base color, albedo to base color, roughness to roughness, and normal to normal. So now we have our 3 material functions fully done and made and saved and everything. So when the functions update, you should see that they have the same thumbnail as our material, which is a good thing. That's a good thing. So now we just need to select all of our material function. Let's actually open up our M landscape. So keep that in a different tab for now. So we're gonna have our M underscore landscape auto tabbed like so. And we're just going to select all of our material functions by clicking on one, holding Control, and then clicking the other two, and just drag them into here. Now, make this full screen again, and I'm just going to put them in a way that makes sense for me. So we want our grass on top, our dirt in between, underneath the grass, and then our sand will go at the bottom. So earlier we made the material attributes when we made our material functions. Now, in order to reference them into our master material, we have to do what is called break material attributes. So we're going to drag out one of these, and we're going to just type in break. I'm going to just duplicate this for the other nodes. Plug those guys in. So what we need to do is we need to blend between layers, and the best way to do it is with what is called linear interpolation. It's basically you take two data sets and with those two data sets you create a best fit in between both of them. And that is essentially linear interpolation. So you use that to blend at a certain ratio, but the ratio is defined by something else, and we'll get into that in a second. Just to start, we're going to start on our bottom layer, the sand, drag that out, type in lerp, L-E-R-P, click enter, and then take the B input for lerp and put that into your base color as well. So this alpha is what I was talking about earlier. This will be controlled by a world aligned blend, and while we're here, we are only really concerned with the blend sharpness and the blended bias for now. So I'm going to drag out the sharpness, type in scalar, and we want a scalar parameter. We're going to leave that right here. I'm going to rename this though as sand, dirt, sharp for sharpness. And then I'm going to take this, duplicate it, drag it into the bias, and then I'll just rename this one. Instead of sand, dirt, sharp, I'll just do sand, dirt, bias. So the sharpness value is how fast it'll blend between the two materials, whereas the bias is a little harder to explain, but from what I've gathered, the bias is basically depending on the slope of your landscape's height map, it will choose which material should go on there based on how high the slope is. So think if you have a mountainside, it could be one material versus if it's a flat on top, it'll be a whole different material because of the bias. So for now, I'm just going to type in some default values. I will do like -8 for this, and then for this, let's go with like 21. So we have the sand, we have our dirt, and now we just need to add our grass on top. So disconnect the lerp by hitting Alt left click, and then drag this one out into another lerp. So lerps only have two nodes, input nodes in the alpha. So you can only use a lerp on two different things at once. You can't do all three of these into one single lerp. It's not how it works. So you have to just do two at a time and then take the combination of those two and use that for another lerp with whatever you're adding. So if we wanted to do a fourth material, we would just drag out this lerp and then put the fourth material's base color into the B output. So for the alpha on this one, we cannot use this world aligned blend because that is our sand and dirt defining function. So we need to take a different world aligned blend, and this is going to be our grass dirt. So I'm going to drag out the sharpness. We're going to grab a scalar parameter. This will be named dirt grass sharp. I'm going to duplicate it, Control W, drag that into the bias, and rename this grass or dirt grass bias. Okay, so it should look something like this at this point. And we can actually go ahead and plug that straight into the base color. So once you have the lerps done for all your materials, I like to just kind of condense them and keep them in sort of like a block shape. And just plug that straight into here because it just makes things a little bit easier for me to visualize, but feel free to organize it however you want. So in here, let's just choose a value of, let's say 27. These are somewhat arbitrary. And -8. What did I do for this one? -5? Yeah, let's do -8. And as you see, we have sand transitioning to dirt, transitioning to grass. And that is all just the base color. So as you can imagine, things look a lot nicer when we start incorporating these other attributes in here. And you can do more than just base color, roughness, and normal. We're just sticking with those three because they're the easiest ones to learn. Again, metallic, I'm just going to set that to 0 with a constant. And now let's just go ahead and do the same for the roughness. So once again, drag bottom roughness out, lerp, grab the B value for that lerp into the roughness of our dirt, and then take the bottom lerp's alpha and put it into our world aligned blend alpha. Drag out the bottom lerp output and again type in lerp, when prompted, and drag that bee into the roughness and put that right into the roughness, not forgetting to put our alpha into the top Wilderland alpha. Again, just tidying up a little bit. And finally, we need to do the normals. Let's go ahead, grab the bottom normal for our sand layer and type in lerp. Take that B into the normal for dirt, and then our alpha this time, instead of going into here, we actually need to put it into the with explicit normal output node, or pin, I'm sorry. And then we once again lerp that one more time. I love that word, lerp. And put the B into the normal for our grass. And then take this alpha and put it into the with explicit normals from our top Wilderland blend. Plug that into the normal, and you will see something magical happen. Now we have our sand mixing in with our dirt and our grass. They're sort of like melting together, if you can see that. Like it looks way better than if I were to disconnect this and you see with just the base color and roughness. Like this looks terrible. This looks like something that you would never see in real life, but this is a little bit closer, and in my opinion looks way better. This would work just fine if we wanted it to. We could just save this, go over to our landscape, throw the material instance in there, but we wouldn't be able to paint anything. You don't solely rely on a generated landscape. You usually generate it and then you paint over it. The generation just saves you a bunch of time and meaningless painting, like trying to get everything perfect. It just gives you a base layer, and then from there you can paint. So in order to paint, this is going to be somewhat similar to our last tutorial. So we're going to make a landscape layer blend. And if you don't know what I'm doing right now, this is in the last video's tutorial, so go ahead and click on that one. I'll leave a link in the description for the previous video. And there's also timestamps so you can see exactly what you want to know. And from here, I'm going to create 4 array elements in this left-hand side, and I'm going to rename them. Element 0, I'm going to call generated. 1 will just be our grass, and I'm just going to go down the hierarchy. So grass, underneath the grass I want dirt, and then under the dirt I want sand. Perfect, so it should look something like this when you're done. So our generated layer is actually the output from these lerps. So this would be our base color output, this would be our roughness output, and our normal output for the generated layer. So we need to plug the top lerp into here, and then plug that output into our base color. We need to take our base color from our grass layer, plug that into grass, and then from the dirt layer into dirt, and the sand layer into sand. So we're going to duplicate this, Control W 2 times, so that we can do this for not only the color, but also the normals and the roughness. So again, generated into generated, that into roughness, and then we're going to do grass roughness into grass, dirt roughness to dirt, and sand to sand. And then finally, the normals. So take the lerp, put it into generated, and then we'll go bottom up, I guess. Normal sand, normal dirt, and normal grass. So it should look something like this. This will allow you to paint onto your landscape. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit save, and then we will go over to our landscape, and if you hit shift 1 to go over to selection mode, just select the landscape, and let's clear this old landscape material because we don't need that anymore. And we're gonna put the instanced landscape that we just made into here. Now this might take a second, but once everything's all finished, you will see that it's sort of working. This is not the generated, this is just our old painting from the previous episodes. So go into your landscape mode by up here, landscape, or you can hit shift 2 and it will take you into landscape mode. Now from here, go over to your paint tab and you can see we already have all of these layer infos. I'm gonna put the generated on top. So for here, I don't want these like they are. I just want the generated one to be going for now. So I'm gonna right click these and clear all of these layers. And then we're going to right click our generated and fill the layer. We need to open up our material instance this time now. So if we drag this into a separate window, we can go over to our scalar parameter values underneath the parameters group, and we can check these 4 boxes. These are the parameters we set earlier. So we don't want this much grass in our landscape, and the reason we make an instance is because an instance allows you to edit your parameters in this nice tidy window, and it works instantly. If I were to, let's say, take this and make this negative 15, it's all dirt. We don't want to do that, that's too much. We'll do 9.5 maybe. So you're just gonna mess with these 4 parameters up here until you get something that you like. Personally, I think this works best for my landscape, but it will be different from landscape to landscape. But for now, I'm going to stick with this. So next up, we are going to add some foliage to this, which is super cool looking. So I'm just gonna save the instance. I'm gonna close out of that to get it out of my way. We have that asset pack that I told you to download in the beginning. Right click in our master material node graph, we can type grass, and landscape grass output is what we're looking for. Now I need to add 1 array element. So the first array element will be our generated grass, and the second array element will be our painted on grass. So if you want to do touch-ups later or foliage using just this one tool, it will work. So we just have this grass, but as of right now, there's literally nothing that it is doing. So we need to make things for it to reference. So I'm gonna go back into my auto shader folder. I'm gonna find some open space, right click. This time we're gonna go under foliage and we're gonna make landscape grass type. So this is that thing that I was talking about that this output needs to reference. So we have 2 input nodes. Therefore, we are going to need 2 landscape grass types. This first one I will name grass 1, and then I will duplicate it, Control W, and it should automatically make it grass 2 as the second one. So we're going to open up grass 1, and I'm going to add 3 array elements. The first one will just be grass. Well, let's do 4 array elements. So the first one will just be this bottom grass right here. Go to drop down, type in grass, and just go all the way down. This open world grass 0, that looks good to me. We will actually turn this grass density down to about 100. It'll just make it a little bit easier on your computer. And then scaling, I'm going to set that to free. And then I will change these X, Y, and Z scale values just to vary it up a little bit so not every single piece of grass is exactly the same. So I'm just gonna do something like that and make sure it's on free. It'll freely pick one of these values for your X, Y, and Z axes to scale by, and then it'll make that. So it's not just gonna be the exact same piece of grass copied over and over and over again. It'll have some variation to it. So I'm going to go into our next array element. We are going to also get a second piece of grass here. So open world grass 0. I'm going to click that. We're going to change this grass density. We'll do something like 75, so it's not as common, but still kind of common. I'm going to just type in some quick values. You can experiment with this part a little bit if you would like. Perfect. And now we're going to move on to our next foliage. So double click to open. In the drop down menu, type in foliage. And it should bring up some beautiful flowers. I like this bunches of red ones. I'm going to tone this down a little bit. We'll go with 20 for the grass density. Same thing, free scaling. And then finally for this last one, again type in foliage. And for this one, we shall, let's go with, I like this one. And this one we'll put at 25, free scale. I'm just gonna type in some values. So we have our 4 vegetation setup in grass 1. Click save, exit out of grass 1, and then I'm just going to duplicate this. So So I'm duplicating that, and we already have these 4. Now we just need to change a few things. For the painted on grass, we are going to want to bump up our grass density a little bit, otherwise you won't really notice the change when you go to paint it. So I'm just going to go through these and increase the grass density by, again, like an arbitrary amount. I'm doing like around like 40 to 50 for the grass, and for the flowers we'll increase them by like 15, just so that you can notice it when you actually do go to paint. Okay, and then save your grass 2. So now we have our grass 1 and our grass 2 set up. We can go back to our master landscape auto material, click on the grass output node, and under grass we are going to get grass 1, and under, name this grass 2 so it doesn't get confusing, and then under the grass 2 we will put in grass 2. So it knows how many and it knows what it's putting, but it doesn't know have any information on where, so we do need to put that in. From here we need to right click, type in landscape, hit the landscape layer blend node, add 1 array element. This will be called our generated, and I'm making sure that these names are exactly the same as these names up here. So generated here, and we're going to duplicate this, except this time I don't want generated, I want grass. So name just like the grass layer up here, plug the generated into our grass, and then our grass layer into grass 2. Our grass layer is being generated by this top world align blend, so we want to use the explicit normals. Our grass layer, we are going to just use the normals from the actual grass texture or grass material itself. So now that we have it set up, everything should look something like this. I know it's a huge jumbled mess, but it will look awesome in just a second. I'm going to hit save. Okay, once that master material's done saving, I'm going to close out of that, and as you can see we have some grass and flowers in here. We still have all of this tiling going on in our landscape that we got rid of in the previous tutorial, and this is going to be a different method for getting rid of your tiling. What we need to do is basically make 2 sizes of our textures. So our grass texture when we're close, and our grass texture when we're far away. And the one that's far away will be scaled to be larger. And we're gonna do this in our material functions. So I'm going to open up our grass, open up our dirt, and open up our sand material functions. And we are going to just start with the grass. So for here, I'm going to drag up our albedo because we will be using some of this space. I'm going to Alt left click on both ends of it, so we just have this. Now I'm going to highlight these nodes, Control W to duplicate them, and we need to lerp these together. So I'm going to drag out the top one, type in lerp, put the B into our bottom albedo, and then this alpha is going to be determined by our camera depth fade. So now we just need to drag out this fade length and type in constant. So I'm going to set that constant to 5,000. We still need to scale our textures. If you go into your level editor, go to the landscape in the top right, go to your details, you will see this little number, overall resolution. Going back into our grass material function, I am going to hold D and click, drag the output of that divide into this UV for our albedo. When I'm highlighting the divide node, I'm going to set this constant B value to the resolution of our map. So mine was 631, and then from here we need to drag out this A, and we are looking for a landscape layer coordinates this time. So once we have these two, we can just go ahead and duplicate them and drag it into the bottom albedo like so, keeping the divide exactly how it is. And we're going to highlight the bottom landscape coordinate, and we're going to change this mapping scale to like 0.05. And then we are going to go to the top landscape coordinate and change that to 0.005. Just to stay organized, I am going to highlight everything, hit C, and this will be variation, or I guess we'll do tiling from camera distance. I'm going to just grab this lerp output and put it into our base color, and that should be that. Now we just need to do the same thing for our dirt and sand, and then save it. And we're just going to have to give our computer some time to deal with what the heck is going on right now. Okay, so after compiling our shaders for what seems like an eternity, we have our finished landscape. So a little trick, first things first, your computer will hate you if you try to build your lighting right now. It will not like that at all, and that's just because we have so many objects in our map. If you look in the top right, I think it says 27,000 objects. That's going to be a lot of shading that you're building, and your computer will probably not want to do that, so we need to get around that. And the way we got to do that real fast, go into your world settings, under your light mass, go all the way down. There should be an arrow like this, show advanced, force no pre-computed lighting box. Check that, click OK, and go ahead, you can build your lighting, and everything should be fantastic. This is an auto-generated landscape, so these textures and everything you're seeing is generated by our computer. Since we have these layers implemented, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and paint over the generated landscape like this. It'll take a second to compile those shaders once more. Let's say I'm going for a beach vibe. I want to make this more sand than anything. I can just paint right over this with some sand, and it'll actually get rid of the foliage there also. Another cool thing about this landscape is if we were to go over to our sculpt, beforehand if we tried to sculpt after you painted your landscape, you would have to repaint whatever you sculpted, and that's not fun. So with this, now we have on-the-fly landscape texturing. So if you were to sculpt anything, it will automatically fill in those textures where they need to be. So you got your dirt, your grass, and your sand all in the same place, and it looks incredible. So I suggest if you made it this far, just sculpt a little bit on your landscape. You really enjoy the time while you do it. It looks super fun and cool. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. If you made it this far, give yourself a pat on the back. I really appreciate the people that have taken the time to watch the videos and showed support. So this section is kind of for you guys. I know the videos are long-winded, but it's a tutorial series, and the subject that we're covering is really complicated. So the way I see it is, if we spend more time learning the basics in the very beginning, we won't have to spend a lot of time learning the more intermediate and advanced methods. So I have one last task for everybody. If you're still watching here, just make sure you drop a subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video and the content in it, leave a like. Anyways, thank you for your time, everybody. Bye-bye.